In the rapidly growing video game industry, the standard for quality products has skyrocketed in recent years. With this demand for bigger and better games, one aspect has gone through a multitude of different experiments where sometimes it's proved fruitful and other times would leave players wanting. Storytelling has been a vital pillar of the video game world since the early 90s, and ever since then, there have been numerous innovations from the traditional form. Storytelling is important to video games because of its ability to give a world a feeling of reality, which can capture a player's imagination to make for an incredibly immersive experience. These video games are Bethesda's The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim and Giant Squid's Abzu. Bethesda's legendary AAA role-playing franchise, known as The Elder Scrolls, came out with its fifth installment called Skyrim, which came out in November 11th of 2011, which has since then been regarded as one of, if not the, greatest role-playing game of all time, with an overall positive rating of 94% on Steam. Giant Squid's Abzu, on the other hand, is an independently made game that came out in August 2nd of 2016, where it received immensely high praise for its short yet innovative design with an overall positive rating of 92% on Steam. While both games have received a great reception, the reason they earned them were for completely different reasons. In The Elder Scrolls V, you're flung into the cold and rugged province of Skyrim, in the middle of a civil war as a mistaken war prisoner, and moments before your gruesome execution, you're inadvertently rescued by the main villain of the plot, the evil dragon Alduin, bringer of the end times. And as he goes about destroying the village of Helgen, you make your escape and find yourself out in the great wilderness of Skyrim, where you're left to your own devices to either follow the main story and become the fabled Dragonborn who's destined to slay Alduin, or to explore what the massive and varied provinces of Skyrim have to offer in a traditional style RPG or role-playing game where the story and context is learned through NPC or non-player computer interactions and quests, as well as Bethesda's best vehicle of storytelling, the level design itself. On the other hand, Giant Squid's Abzu takes things on a much smaller scale, yet equally as grand route. In a game where you can't die and there is no spoken dialogue, it leaves the player to concentrate on the level design and the player character's surroundings. As you swim through the roughly hour and a half to 3 hour story, you'll notice that the narrative is told by the level itself, as well as the music that accompanies it, which informs the player whenever something important is happening. In Skyrim, the game music always accompanies you as you're making your way around the land. There's a soundtrack for every situation the player may find themselves in. Whether it be from slaying a jogger with your axe, blasting a bear with a fireball, stealing from a merchant's cart, launching your off a mountain with a powerful shout, getting flung into space by a reluctant giant, assassinating royalty during her own wedding, clawing a guard's face off as a werewolf, to even murdering an entire household of innocent farmers in broad daylight. Your deeds are always matched with smooth melodies or exciting crescendos. In Abzu, the music plays a key role in driving the player along in the story, making every moment feel worthwhile as well as important. The exciting whimsicalness played during the sections of swimming in rapid currents alongside hundreds of different fish gives one a euphoric sense of delight. In the calmer moments of the game, the music still binds the player's attention when matched with gorgeous visuals and panoramas. Using music as a vehicle that seamlessly moves the player from chapter to chapter effortlessly conveys a sense of fulfillment when that giant squid logo appears at the end of the game.
Got something for just about everybody in here. Give a holler if you have any questions. Everything's for sale, my friend. Everything. If I had a sister, I'd sell her in a second.
Skyrim has often been associated with being the king of immersion. The main reason for this is because Skyrim feels like a real, living, and breathing world. The painstaking effort found in even the smallest details makes the world of Skyrim much more believable, whether it be from the arrangement of food and plates on a table, to the colossal and ancient dwarven ruins buried underneath mounds of snow. Exploration is key in Skyrim, where there is a new and exciting diversion to take the player off the beaten path, no matter where they may find themselves.
Good work.
Exploration also leads to a plethora of ways to introduce new storylines. For example, the player can talk to a merchant whose golden claw was just recently stolen from his shop. Here is where the player can choose to follow this new questline to search for the claw, or to continue exploring and come back to it later. When following the questline, the player will find themselves fighting through several bandits, as well as a handful of the zombie-like Draugr in the dungeon of Falls Barrow, and then later on encountering a bandit who is tangled in spiderwebs, begging the player to free him before the giant spider can come back to eat him. After killing the spider, the player can free the bandit, and he'll laugh at them while running away, exclaiming,
You fool. Why should I share the treasure with anyone?
As the player chases the bandit, he leads them to a room full of sleeping Draugr, where he accidentally wakes them up and subsequently dies. After fighting off the Draugr, the player can then loot the bandit's body and pick up the golden claw, as well as other goodies he may have on him. Continuing through the dungeon, the player will find themselves in a hallway filled with ancient and detailed murals, where at the end of this hallway lies a door that's shaped like a half circle with 3 symbols lined in the middle of it. And each of these symbols can be individually rotated to make a dozen different combinations, which is the standard dungeon puzzle system in Skyrim. After looking at the symbols engraved in the golden claw, the player can match the symbols on the door, thus solving the puzzle and opening the door. It's also important to note the subtle use of music, as the door is unlocking itself and the game is informing the player of their success. When progressing towards the final section of the dungeon, the player will look onto a beautiful and open area within the mountain, where a great light source and a satisfying sound effect tells the player that this is an important area. Where after fighting a boss in the clearing, the player can return the claw to the merchant for a monetary reward, his sincerest gratitude, and his blessing to marry his sister, if the player so chooses. In Abzu, immersion is gained through letting the music absorb the player when it leads them to the next section of the game. While also being a game with a very distinct art style, the level of detail in the world and the plethora of sea life is just as immense as Skyrim's. The accuracy in which the fish swim around while also reacting to each other gives Abzu a spark of life and really blends well with its atmospheric soundtrack.
But there's one they fear. In their tongue, he is Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
For me, I believe that both of these games are incredibly exceptional, and I mean, I love both of them to death. I've spent hundreds upon hundreds of hours, at least mainly in Skyrim, and I've spent dozens in Abzu, and I've loved each and every time I've played, and I've had a blast, especially filming for this project, but I've definitely just been so great. It's such a great experience playing these games, and both of them just absolutely capture my imagination. Skyrim with its like very intense soundtrack and, you know, just the limitless potential and of adventure and exploration, and then in Abzu it's so fluid and it's so seamless that essentially all the beautiful sequences that you're playing through, they just almost never stop, since there's only around like 3 very short loading screens. And so it's just a continuous trip. It's essentially like swimming through an art exhibit, is what I'd say. It's essentially how I would describe Abzu. It's just swimming through an art exhibit. And I definitely think that the visuals and level design of Skyrim, they can capture you. Like if you really let yourself get immersed into it, you can really get into it, and it just really makes you excited at the possibilities and to learn more about Skyrim and the world that you're adventuring in. I mean, you could be standing in the middle of a field and then look at a mountain, at any mountain, and then just say, I'm going to climb that. And then afterwards, in a few, however long it could take you, more often than not, you make it to the top of the tower and or the mountain, and you'll be looking down at from where you once were, and you just feel this sense of pride at your achievement, and then, onward to the next adventure on the other side of the mountain. And then in Abzu, it's just the sheer gorgeousness of the visuals and the music, just the way that it syncs together and is a perfect harmony with each other. It's honestly one of the only games I've ever cried in, and I can promise you, as someone who's played hundreds of games, it's a very rare thing. It definitely, Abzu just blew me away. And so pretty much to summarize everything I just said, I definitely think that both games are absolutely phenomenal. They just capture my imagination, and I really think that they are honestly just one of the greatest artworks of our generation for the most part. And I definitely think that is the most important goal that any video game designer could achieve, is, just leaving their players with a sense of just joy after playing their games. I know we might be a little over time, but before we finish this presentation, I'm going to show you guys two of my absolute favorite scenes or sequences in Abzu, and I really hope that you guys will enjoy them as well.